There we go. Little family reunion of sorts. Yay. And you guys are from where? Cocoa Beach, all the way. I tell you, you know what? This time of year, you know, before the pandemic, this time of year is when everybody from Europe and South America seem to be visiting Florida for Disney. But so we usually kind of piggyback off that. Now it's like, oh, you're all the way from Cocoa Beach? You came all the way from Cocoa? Amazing. Well, listen, thanks for coming, guys. I tell you, listen, one good thing is coming out of this pandemic is people say I'm much better looking with a mask on my face. I'm seriously. I know. But anyway, if you like the trip, I'm Tom. If you don't like it, Robert's good. But and definitely ask questions. So much more fun, you know, when you do. But let's get the air conditioner. I mean, it is warm, so this is the closest thing I've got to air conditioning. Maybe I did ask, but has anybody done that? Have you guys done this? Anybody in the group? No. Well, great. I can just make stuff up. You have no idea what I'm talking about. But anyway, thank you so much for coming. We are going to be on 3 different lakes. This one's called Lake Osceola. It's named after the famous Seminole Indian leader. They actually claimed that long before Winter Park was here, Osceola camped right along the shores of these lakes and loved it. And so I don't know if you knew the Winter Park. I know you were to the boat tour, but the town itself is just a cool little town. And lots to do. The best thing is taking the boat tour. That was brilliant. We do have 3 museums that are all closed on Mondays, but they've been closed during the pandemic. A couple just reopened, but not today. So one of those museums is to our right, which is the Alvin Plotchik Museum. It's a sculptor's museum. Matter of fact, you can see the sculptings. It's just a pretty place too. A lot of events are held on that lawn because of the beauty. In my opinion, the most important event they ever had there was my daughter's wedding, which thank you, still paying for it just a little bit. And the house to the left of it, this gray and white one, this has actually got a pretty cool story. It is on the museum's property, but it's only been here for 5 years, even though it was built in 1885. So that house used to be on the other side of this lake, kind of behind us. Some people bought it and didn't want it, and a lot of the locals didn't want a historic home torn down, and they raised the money to move it here. What makes the story different is they couldn't use the roads to move it because of all the trees in Winter Park. They actually cut that house in half with chainsaws, built a barge, and floated it there in 2 separate pieces. This is all on YouTube and under Cape. They spent 2 years putting it back together. Could have built several homes for what they spent, but it gets used. And I mentioned we're going to be on 3 different lakes, so we, I think I did, so we use canals to go from one to the other. The lakes are natural, most part of the lakes are. The canals that join them were originally little streams connecting the lakes. And in the 1870s, a little before they started this town, they started to cut down the pine trees around the lakes. And the lumberjacks that cut the pines down also hand dug these canals and did that to float those pines to a sawmill that was on the next lake. So the canals have been here 150 years. This was the fern canal, so plenty of ferns, but also bamboo. You can see the largest type over here. And yeah, especially you folks from Florida know this, but the stuff that hangs from the trees is Spanish moss, which is actually neither Spanish nor moss. So go figure. I know. Why? They used it for a lot of things in the early 1900s. They used to stuff mattresses with it. Found out pretty quickly it's full of bugs. So it's also where the expression "don't let the bed bugs bite" first started. Now this is where I have you all stand up and introduce yourselves. Now do not stand up here, watch your heads. Some of you might have to dock. Lakes have come up, we have some rain lately, so lakes have come up a little bit. This should also explain why we don't have any tops on our boats, which I'm sure you were wondering. We would love to have the drivers especially. We just can't because of the bridges and trees here.
This is dangerous.
Although it's not open today, if you do have the opportunity to come back to Winter Park, the most famous museum in this town is the Morse Museum, and it's up on North Park Avenue. It just kind of reopened, but it's the largest comprehensive collection of Tiffany glass in the world. It's pretty amazing, and so if you did have a chance to come back and see that, I would. This is Lake Virginia. One of the first settlers in this area is from that state, named it after a little bit bigger lake than Lake Osceola. You know, I mentioned we're going to be on 3 lakes. There are 6, though, that are connected by canals on this chain. One of them's teeny, but a lot of other lakes join these lakes by streams. So south of here, Orlando's lakes run into this lake. And then from here, all the water eventually flows all the way up to the Atlantic Ocean in Jacksonville. It does that by way of the St. Johns River, so it hits many lakes doing that. But so this is all St. John's water management, and kind of typical of Florida's lakes, not really very deep, 10 to 12 feet kind of average down here. Speaking of other lakes, you can see one right here. So if you look through that little canal, that goes to Lake Mizell, and then my house is the one just to the right of that. Oh no, it's much bigger than that. No, the people that own this bought the original house in the middle where the columns are 4 years ago and spent 2 years putting the right side and left side on it. But the original house right there in the middle actually has some history to it. It's about 100 years old, and the first couple of years it was a businessman's club that didn't work, so a professor from Rollins bought the building and made it his house. And then gave it to Rollins. So what it was really known for was being Rollins Music Conservatory for many years. But Rollins sold it in the 70s and it's been a house ever since. That house and these next 3 that we're going to go by, all 4 of these sit on Lake Mizell and Lake Virginia. So these guys get a sunrise on Mizell and a sunset on Virginia. Nobody lives in the house over here. It's on about 50 acres today. This is a preserve. It's called the Genius Preserve. It's on 3 lakes, and they don't allow people on it. But the people that lived in this house before land was made into the preserve had 225 acres on these lakes, and they thought it was so pretty. They just loved Winter Park, so they used to open up the dirt road going through their property to the public. It was kind of the favorite thing to do here was to drive on Genius Drive here, which was also full of peacocks, and that's why the peacock is a symbol of our town, because all the ones here, people used to love to come see them. There's still some back here. Anyway, the same family owned this land for 110 years and bought it for about $2 an acre and sold it for right around $2 million an acre, so they did okay. And actually the money went to a foundation, the Morse Foundation, which controls a ton of things here, is what controls it. And the buoys we go through, this is a slalom course for the water ski team of Rollins. I've had some New Englanders want to know if they were lobster traps, but no, we're here on a lake. And speaking of Rollins, that's to our right. My favorite building is their chapel. So a good view of the steeple. It's named after a founding father here. It's the Knowles Chapel. And because of the pandemic, you know, the school's closed and the chapel is too, but you can always walk around that. When the school's open, it's usually open. Rollins campus starts on that road in front of us. It's called Lakeview, and then goes almost back to where we came in. They've got right around 80 acres here on Lake Virginia. The school was started in 1885. Rollins is, you all knew this, it's the first private college in Florida, and today considered to be the best liberal arts school in the South. Started with 60 students, 60, and it cost $100 a year, and parts changed. Today it's probably the most expensive school in the States, or at least one of them. So it's right around $67,000 a year with room and board. And today about 2,000 undergrads. Only about 10 students for every professor though, and almost every professor has a PhD here. So excellent education, super pretty here. And you know, I know this is a little subjective, but the Princeton Review ranked it the prettiest campus in the U.S. in 2015, and you know, still rank it in the top 10. Good place for a walk. Pretty much the best walk for sure around the lake would be on this path. But if you did, you know, walk the lake, make sure you walk the middle too, because it's got, it's all Mediterranean architecture, has been since the 20s, and pretty great architecture. These buildings that they're building will be Mediterranean there, but they're replacing some small buildings that held about 200 kids in very small dorms. These will be holding 500 kids in huge apartment-style dorms with pools and gyms, and so they're trying to create more campus life, you know, when they do get finished here. Really good athletic program. They've won that national championships in numerous things, D2 school, but water skiing's one of them. That's their ski jump right there. They don't jump on land, they just put it there when they're not using it. And the building here on the point is the other museum in town. So I talked about, we have three, I mentioned two. This is the Cornell Fine Arts Museum. When it's open, it's free. It hasn't reopened yet from the pandemic though, but about $10 million of their artwork is in the hotel that Rollins owns here. So if you look through these buildings, you can see the roof of it. It's across the street from Rollins. It's where the old Langford Hotel was. So I've been mentioning that, especially during the pandemic, because it's a good place for art, but also just a good place to visit. Actually has kind of a cool story. It's already considered to be one of the best hotels in Florida, and all the money it makes goes to scholarships for Rollins. So it's just a neat idea. You know how the train comes right through the middle of town. Well, those tracks came through in 1880, but by 1889, the town and college had gotten big enough, some local guys thought there should be a commuter train. Basically, the only other way to get to Orlando was by horseback. So they built this little teeny narrow gauge railroad, and the station for this one sat right where the beach is. It was called the Winter Park Orlando Railroad, but nobody ever called it that. It was such a small train, they nicknamed it the Dinky Line, so that's why this beach is, actually you could go here, it's a park called Dinky Dock, named after the station. And it ran for 78 years. It jumped the tracks a lot. You'd have to jump off and help the engineer pick it up and put it back on when it did. And then the building to the right of it was an apartment complex that Rollins College bought and made into a dormitory 16 years ago. It's not a bad place to live while you're in school. The house to the right of that, not too bad either. That's the president's house for Rollins. Actually, both he and his wife squeeze into that one, about 9,000 square feet. And it's also the last building on the water that's Rollins. So everything to the right of it's private homes and condos. I talked quite a bit about Rollins history. Actually, Winter Park has a great little Florida history. It was started in 1881. I talked about the train coming through in 80, and these two New Englanders thought that would give New England, well, actually, wealthy Northerners a great way to get here. And they loved these lakes. They thought it'd be the perfect place for a town for those wealthy Northerners to have their winter homes, and they kind of developed this area around the lakes. And then Rollins came along 4 years later. The reason it's called Winter Park is not just a place to be in the winter, but it also looked like a park here. At least these guys thought it did. But anyway, the year after Rollins was started, the largest hotel in the state was also built here, which used to be where the Plagic Museum is, and it was called the Seminole Hotel. So that definitely made it a place to vacation and live. U.S. presidents started coming down to Winter Park to stay at the Seminole, but unfortunately it burned down in 1902. So 16 years it was here, but it really kind of got the ball rolling. We've had other hotels. You know, I mentioned the Langford, what I mentioned was the Alpine. The Langford Hotel used to be where the Alpine is. I was there 50 years. But also 10 years after the Seminole burned down in 1902, a different group of folks put a smaller hotel across the lake. Watch your heads, everybody. So be careful here. But anyway, the hotel they built across the lake, they spent a lot of time on the name. It was the new Seminole Hotel, which they tore down in the 60s to build the homes that sit there. I'll show you what that was. And two of my favorite trees on this trip are right here. On the left side, about a 300-year-old live oak, which goes across the canal. And what they say is the oldest pine tree in Winter Park. So look on the right, about a 150-year-old pine. Oh, sure. Just don't let the FBI know about it. I'm trying to keep a low profile here. These roots that stick up are called cypress knees that give oxygen to the cypress roots below the water. They also support the tree. And also over here on the right side, you have behind that big cypress, kind of a more modest brown house with a deck. That was originally a retreat for the Walgreens drugstores. And of course the irony is, as soon as they built it, CVS built a much bigger house next door to them. No, they didn't. Thank you for listening. Sometimes it's stone silence there. So that would be your fake news or alternative fact of the trip that I made up. But the Walgreens part's true.
Look at that little boathouse.
Neat little boathouse, which I think looks like Cheryl's she shed before it burned down. The house it belongs to is one of the few original homes here on Lake Osceola. So you can see it's older. It's a Georgia Revival style home built in 1889, and the gentleman that had it built was from Cortland, New York, up near Syracuse, and wanted to live here in the winter. We were talking about it being a place for winter homes. His wife did not. Thought it was a wilderness down here. So to get her to come down, he built a replica of their Cortland home. They had two of these and liked it here. The town was small, people knew each other. It's a big house that has a ballroom, so it was used a lot for social events. you. You know, I talked about the Seminole Hotel and then 10 years later the new Seminole. So the Seminole is behind us, the new Seminole is right here. And a matter of fact, that little gazebo is the only thing left. So it's a 100-year-old gazebo with a 1-year-old house, but they put a roof on the house to kind of match their historic gazebo. And there never was a house on that lawn until, since they tore down the Seminole, until they built this. So 60 years kind of looked like a park right there. You know, I don't usually talk about prices of homes or lots, but the reason I've been talking about the price of this lot, and actually just the lot in particular, is because it had an old house on it. The guy paid over $4 million because he wanted a big lot to put Winter Park's largest house on. So he plans on putting a 45,000 square foot house on that lot if he ever does it. But the plans are approved. And the canal we're coming into, this is the Venetian Canal. It's by far the longest. It also kind of looks like the lumberjacks that dug it had a few cocktails before they did. This doesn't go straight at all, so I want to stay seated. The lawn to the right of it has that statue, which faces north. So we call that southern exposure here on Lake Osceola. Cooking. Yeah, well, I was going to say, watch your head. It's a little late for that. I know. I haven't seen one crow since they put up these. Of course, I never saw one before they put them up. That's a fuck mine and move these things up. You know, if you do have a chance to drive around Winter Park, you would definitely want to. That bridge was Palmer Avenue. There's a road right here on the right. It's called Alabama Drive. We'll see it better in a minute. It circles in and out of Palmer. I talked about hotels. It has a building that was a hotel called the Alabama Hotel. Is now a condominium. They converted it in 1980, but it was very famous when it was the hotel. People like Sinclair Lewis, Margaret Mitchell, H.G. Wells all stayed there. But it's through Alabama Drive right here on the right side.
Daddy hit the lotto. Yeah.
Here we have a couple different types of ginger plants, and this is one. You can see the bud, the ginger bud here. And then, plants on the left with big leaves look like elephant's ears. They're called elephant ear plants. I know it. Well, this is Lake Maitland, which is the largest lake on the chain, so about 450 acres. There's a little island in the middle, straight ahead. It's called Dog Island. It's a favorite place to boat here. And this building to our right is Rollins College's crew boathouse. Of course, Rollins is on a lake, which is actually half as big as this one, so this is just much better for the crew team. The white bird flying over, a lot of them are nested in this park I'm going to talk about, but those are egrets. So this is the park I was going to build. We have a lot of parks in Winter Park. I love Mead Gardens. This is really well loved. It's called Craft Azalea Gardens, and full of cypress trees. The ones on the shore, the oldest in town. Some of those are close to 1,000-year-old trees. Then also in the park where the girl is, they've got that little 6-column structure called an exedra, which in Greek means 6-column structure. And I know, and it's used primarily for taking pictures. Seriously, a good place for all of you to go get some. A lot of small weddings too. The bird at the top of this cypress is an anhinga. Those are more commonly called snake birds. So if you see a neck sticking up out of the lake, it looks like a snake. It's one of those. They get waterlogged after they've been fishing for a while, and they go places like that, dry their feathers. So back in the canal, I told you how Alabama Drive does that little horseshoe and takes you to Craft Azalea, comes over here, and the old hotel is right there at the corner, the condos now. The homes to the left of it, these are on a road that runs into Alabama Drive called Via Tuscany. This Mediterranean right in front of us has my favorite boathouse and some pretty good landscaping. You know, all these in many different colors, the things you see blooming, like the purple one to the right of the house are crepe myrtles, which are still pretty colorful right now. Now just to the left of this house up ahead with the black shutters, is the oldest house in the neighborhood, 102-year-old house. This whole neighborhood was their orange grove. You know, today it's Orange County. It was originally Mosquito County. We got plenty of mosquitoes. It's not the best name for bringing tourists to town. Now, two doors from the left of this house with the columns up ahead. Architecturally, you know, kind of looks pretty old. It's 4 years old, so it's really one of the things I like about the town. You know, it's just a neat blend of old and new homes here. The newer one, not a bad house, but also has a guest house on the left, the pool house, pool, and putting green on the right side, and that's a clay tennis court right there on the shore. Talk about living in glass houses. They haven't finished this, but they put the boat in. So one feature it has, besides all this glass, is the only boat garage instead of a boat house. So they have like a little railroad track that pulls the boat up to their garage instead of having it on the water. I talked about anhingas drying their feathers, and there's one on the lawn over here doing that. You see how the wings are spread. Now the house right here was modeled after a house in Venice. 5 years ago they put the right side on. The original house there on the left is pretty old, and 20 years ago Tom Hanks used that to represent an astronaut's home in a movie. It was called From the Earth to the Moon, and he had his film crew stay there for about 6 weeks. The movie came out. There's about 30 seconds of airtime with the house in it. Finish the movie. This little canal to the right, you know, sort of looks like it goes to a different lake. That one does not. Everything you see to the left of the canal is an island, which would be a peninsula if they hadn't put the canal there. And up until the 1920s, that land was too low to build on. So they sandbagged the perimeter and backfilled it, made a 12-acre island, put 11 homes out here, and these are definitely some of the more expensive homes in Winter Park. It's called the Isle of Sicily. Cypress in the water, that is anhinga in an osprey nest. I haven't seen the osprey in I haven't flown the coop, but it also obviously has a bunch of Christmas ornaments. It looks a lot like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree, and appropriately one of our drivers named Charlie and his family decorated that 26 years ago, decided not to take the bulbs off, and then every Christmas after that, they would just replace the ones that get blown off, which is usually most of them. But Charlie passed away. It was such a cool tradition with that family, and they loved doing it. But he passed away 4.5 years ago. The last 4 Christmases, myself and a couple of the drivers have done the decorating of that. But yeah, we bring some of his kids with us. You know, they're about our age, but it's really just an excuse for taking a boat ride, drinking a little bit. I don't know if y'all noticed, I don't always mention this, but there's one ornament that's not ours. It kind of stands out. It's an orange carrot. And that's because the comedian Carrot Top lives right over here, and he's been home a ton because his show's closed down in Vegas, and he put a carrot in the tree. called 12 Oaks. It's really more of a private drive, but you can see an empty lot, a house being built, another empty lot, other homes have just been finished. So 6 homes have been torn down in this cove in 2 years. They're starting to do the site work, just starting today on that one up ahead. So just to the left of this empty lot, and glad to see them getting work on it. The house to the left of it kind of looks like it's under construction. It's actually being renovated, but pretty heavily renovated. It's been around for a while. For many years, it was the largest house on the chain. It's still one of them. It's about a 23,000 square foot house. It also originally had a basketball court inside the house. It was one of the Magic players originally. So that was Horace Grant's house. And he got traded to Los Angeles. That's when he sold it. The guy that bought it from him turned the basketball court into a ballroom and dining room, and then started lowering a bunch of stuff designed for a tall guy. So they had the lower countertops and light switches and toilets and the urinal and the gym. I know, go figure. He was. He actually, yeah, he has a couple of rings with Michael Jordan. Are you from that area? Yeah, he was popular. He didn't care for Michael's little show series he just made. I don't think he portrayed him in exactly the manner he wanted to be portrayed. Yeah, well, that's a good question. Sometimes I'm surprised it doesn't get asked. So for my friends in the back who didn't hear the question, it was, what happens when somebody's coming the other way of the canal? And, it depends on where you are. There are, although it doesn't look like it, numerous places that are wide enough to pass. Right here, we probably could, depending on the size of the boat. And then there's sometimes empty boathouses that we ask boats to pull into if they have to. We do have signs at either end of the canal that say when we're in it, so we hope people read them and don't get in when we are, but we still run into plenty. We were in it some last hour. And last hour we were on the have to back up, quite a ways to make it work, but it just, we just kind of make it work as best we can. Yeah, although if you're good, you're one of the few people that ever reads the sign. I know you need to get a boat so we wouldn't have to worry about you. Yeah, obviously this is a wide spot. It's actually the widest part of the canal. So we have nicknamed it the widest part of the canal for sure. I don't always mention this, but I do get asked, usually by people not from the U.S., but if we're going to see any alligators, in case you were wondering, this is where they jump in. No, we don't, but used to. So I couldn't remember I told you this, but about 30 years ago, a lot of the folks on the lakes asked the city to remove them and relocate them, which they have done to the point that today it's really rare for a gator to creep into these lakes, and then eventually, sometimes they do, and then they pull them out when they do. There is just a little heads up. There's the water from these lakes flows to a lake 10 miles north of here called Lake Jessup, which they do claim has more alligators per square foot than any place in the U.S. now. It's over right around 12,000. It's about 11 an acre. And one reason Jessup's got so many alligators is that's where Winter Park put their alligators 30 years ago, so they're kind of full of ours. Shortly after we get it back out here onto the lake, I'm going to point out a house that used to belong to Fred Rogers. Remember Mr. Rogers? I don't know if y'all knew this, but he was still is, the most talked about Rollins College graduate. And we'll talk about him and his house when we see it. But Rollins has had some other interesting grads years ago. Paul, Buddy Epson, Anthony Perkins. A couple of years ago, Paul McCartney's stepson went to Rollins, so Paul was just like, he was at Winter Park all the time. He loved it here. And when Tiger Woods' ex-wife Galen broke up with Tiger, not only did she get a degree, she was valedictorian and gave the commencement address. But Fred's definitely the guy for Rollins. As a matter of fact, they're putting a $250,000 statue on the campus next year. So the degree that Fred Rogers got was in music. He got it in 1951. And he was from a suburb of Pittsburgh. He's from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And actually his first year of college, he was a smart guy. He went to Dartmouth and transferred to Rollins and brought his piano down here. Wanted to put it in his dorm room and they wouldn't let him do it. So his parents bought the red brick house with the ivy right there and put the piano inside there for him. So now you know what beautiful neighborhood he was referring to. And actually quite a few Rogers connections. His sister went there and he met his wife there. And he still has a nephew that's a professor of music at Rollins. You know what, I didn't talk about the other one, but I mentioned the house they cut in half and floated across the lake. It used to be where the gray and white one is. 3 doors to the right of it, I usually talk about this. There's a really big Mediterranean home the house that was there, they moved to the golf course right across the street 16 years ago. It's called Casa Feliz, and you could certainly walk around that. Now the golf course is the second oldest golf course in Florida. It's where this road that runs along the lake begins. And because it's on the water and close to the railroad tracks, our founding fathers' homes were here. Most of those gone, but it still has some amazing old and new homes. And also has our oldest churches, the Alphon Inn, the golf course, Casa Feliz, historic buildings, and it goes right into Rollins campus. So I always, kind of mention this because it's a good walk or drive here. House, I guess I'm kind of redundant, but that's here on Airlock, and it's actually across the street. It was Morse's, the Morse family's home, and it goes with this boathouse, which is obviously the oldest boathouse in Winter Park too. In front of us, a pretty historic place. It's called the Winter Park Scenic Boat Tours. So that should look pretty familiar. And actually for Florida, pretty historic. They started this in 1938. So working on 83 years that they've done it every day except for Christmas Day, pandemics, and bad weather. So we are considered to be the oldest continuously run tourist attraction in the state of Florida. I know it, and I'm not the original driver. I just look like I am. But it's just such an unusual time for all of us, and I'm just so happy you're all comfortable being here. I personally think this the best place to be is outside in the sun. So definitely come back. We'd love to see you. But thanks for coming today too, guys. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear. And yeah, happy birthday to my friends up here. I don't know when it is, but I know it's somewhere around now or something. Right there.
Guys, if y'all would, stay seated till he gets the door open and the boat tied off, and then y'all can